Okay, I believe we are live. Good evening, everyone. Let's give people a few minutes to enter the room. I am DePelsh Magruder, founder of MOBB United, Moms of Black Boys United. I couldn't decide if I wanted to say the abbreviated version or the full name. It's Moms of Black Boys United, MOBB United, abbreviated. And we are so excited about the conversation we're going to have tonight. We have a very special guest, Cindy McField-Asamoah. And we are just delighted to have you here, Cindy. We've known each other for, I don't remember how many years now, but
A long
a
time.
while, right? A long time. And we've been talking about the work that we've been doing in this space, but it's our first time being in conversation about it in this way. We've talked about it in passing. My son was a part of your program when he
Yeah.
was younger, and I've been admiring and following your work, but we haven't had a chance to talk about it. So I'm excited. I'm just checking to make sure that we're actually live and that the platform isn't so, oh yes, we are live. So
Live.
we are
Awesome.
live. Wonderful.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
people are starting to join. So we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So if you are watching, please share the stream. We want more people to hear this information. It will also live afterwards, so you can watch it or encourage others to watch in their spare time. But please start sharing now. Invite all of your friends you know who have sons to join so that they can learn more about the boys' room. So first, I'm just going to share a little bit of your bio. So give me a few minutes for formality, and then we'll get into the conversation. So
Absolutely.
our guest this evening is Cindy McField-Asamoah. As I've said, she's a passionate mother, advocate, and the founder of the Boys Room. The Boys Room is an affinity program dedicated to empowering adolescent boys in predominantly white institutions. Um, Cindy saw the lack of representation for her own son, so we'll talk about that, and other Black and Brown boys in these spaces. And she was inspired to create a platform where young men can safely discuss issues, topics, and emotions critical to their growth and development. That emotional piece is so key because there's so few spaces where our boys feel comfortable expressing their emotions. A little bit
Right.
more about Cindy. She's a first generation American, so she understands firsthand the challenges of feeling different in the room. Growing up as one of the few people of color in a PWI, she recognized the absence of social programs that could have helped her navigate that experience. And this realization fueled her commitment to ensuring that today's boys have the support, mentorship, and community they need to thrive. She has a Bachelor of Science in Social Work and 25 years of experience working with people. She brings all of that to her baby, the Boys Room, and she was a social worker at a Connecticut middle school where she facilitated peer groups for children, deepened her understanding of their unique challenges. And now she's fully dedicated to this, building a meaningful and impactful program that fosters resilience, confidence, and success for the next generation of young men. That's what we all want for our sons, for all of our children. So we look forward to this conversation. And Cindy, that is your official bio, but I would love for you to just introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself, your personal, professional journey, and kind of what has shaped you and led to this being your passion project.
Wow. Well, thank you, Depelsha. It's wonderful to be here in this space with you. As you mentioned, we've known each other for years, and this is our first opportunity to do this together. So I'm really excited to be here. So thank you for having me. Yeah, as you mentioned, I am the founder of the Boys Room, and it's a mission-based affinity program for Black and Brown boys in these spaces. But prior to being the founder of the Boys Room, I was actually and still am actually a real estate broker. So
Oh,
I'll
wow.
give you a little history. So I am originally from Boston, Massachusetts. I grew up in Boston in the 70s and 80s. My parents are not from this country, as you mentioned. I'm first generation here. My parents are from Honduras, Central America,
Okay.
and they immigrated to Boston. And they sent all of us, my siblings and I, there were four of us, to PWIs. So, I started in fifth grade. I don't know, Dipelsha, if you've ever heard of a program called the METCO program in Massachusetts. Have you ever heard of that program?
No. Mm-mm.
So the MEDCO program is it's Metropolitan Council for Education. And so it is a busing program. And so that's where they actually took the kids in the inner city and bused them to the most affluent neighborhoods, towns, districts in Massachusetts.
Mhm.
And so that program started in the 60s. So when I joined Metco, that was in the 80s. It's fairly still young. It was only 20 years old.
Yeah.
So the program, you were supposed to, kids were supposed to be bused from Boston to these towns. And then in turn, the kids in that town, they were supposed to be bused into Boston. Well, that part never happened, right? So
Mm.
it's just us traveling out there. And, I always share that, I had a pretty long commute because I didn't live along the bus route. I lived about 20 or 30 minutes outside. So they were not willing to come to my neighborhood to pick me up. So my parents had to drive us further into Boston along the bus route. So that's 30 minutes in. And then my commute was about, I want to say, anywhere from 50 minutes to an hour. So it was a
Wow.
really long commute just one way. And so it was really interesting just seeing, just being in the city, right? And then having such a long bus ride. You see the transition, right, from
Mm.
like living in the city, and then now you're looking at all of these wonderful, these beautiful homes in the suburbs. And
Mhm.
so there were, I believe, 52 school districts. I'm sorry, not 52, 32 school districts in Metco. And so we were the smallest school district. We were so small that we had kids from elementary, middle, and high school on one bus. And so
Wow.
other programs, they had like, a bus for elementary, a bus for middle, and maybe even two buses for high school. So they were larger school districts.
Mhm.
We were really, really small. I was one of two Black girls in my graduating class. One of,
Wow.
and so it was interesting being, in that space. And so, as you mentioned, I mean, I know firsthand how it felt to be in that
Yeah.
space. So,
Can I just share, like, we have a very similar experience in that regard. I grew up in the Atlanta area, so a lot more Black people, proportionally,
mhm.
but we had a program, similar program called the M2M program, which stood
Okay,
for minority to majority. So minorities going to majority schools. And I
yeah,
remember also in the 80s, so we're probably in a similar age range,
yeah,
and we would get picked up and taken to this big bus depot. So there were all these buses like lined up where all the
yeah,
people in the M program would come, and then you have to get on your bus going to your particular family white school. And, very interesting experience. Interestingly, my husband had a similar program in Los Angeles, except they did what they were supposed to do in Boston that you described. They actually sent Black kids to white neighborhoods and white kids to Black neighborhoods. And
hmm,
his story was totally different because the white kids who came to the school in his neighborhood, the Black neighborhood was nicer than the white neighborhood they were coming from. So they got a whole other lesson in what LA life is like in Baldwin Hills, which was,
yeah,
shocking to them that these Black people were living in these homes with pools and up in the hills and all of that. So
yeah.
interesting. I don't know if those programs still exist. I know it doesn't in
That's it.
DeKalb County where I grew up, but
Well, I know our program still exists.
it does even
Yeah,
today. Okay.
yeah, it still
And it's
exists,
still called Metco.
and it's still called Metco. Yes,
Okay.
yep,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. So continue. I just wanted to share.
No, that's fine. So, and I honestly, I don't think that program is going to go away. It's been around, like I said, since the 60s. And so, my nephew was in it. I've had family members who are also in, and they went to different school districts. So it is definitely alive still.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I graduated, from my high school. And so, and I left Massachusetts, and I was so excited to just leave Massachusetts. And, I didn't go far. I went to school in Connecticut, but
Right.
being on like a campus, seeing more people like me, like I felt like I was at an HBCU. And I
You saw
wasn't.
like three more Black people like, this is an HBCU.
I was, I was really excited about that, and it was still a small percentage, but it was huge for me. It was huge. It was huge. So so went to college in Connecticut, graduated, and then shortly after, I moved to New York. Now I was actually coming to New York so that I can pursue my master's. Well, that never
Mhm.
happened. I got into real estate, and I was excited about that because, social worker, real estate agent, very different.
Yeah,
Um,
very different.
very different. So I just did that, and I did it for quite some time. I mean, when I started in 2000, I was working at one of the most prestigious real estate companies in New York City. And, I just kept moving up the ranks, and my title kept changing. And then after a decade, I was just like, okay, why am I still giving them my money? So I was like, it's time for me to kind of start my own thing. And honestly, it was really hard for me to do that because I was
Hmm.
scared. I built my whole business at this company, and considering leaving was really, really scary for me. So it took me a couple years to finally decide to hang up my shingle somewhere else, and I did that.
And you
So
left real estate to do this or to do something else or to go into education, I guess.
I continued on in real estate, and I started my own real estate firm. And so
Okay.
and then 6 years later, that's when I started the boys room.
Okay. So before we get to the boys' room, because we're definitely going to get into that soon, I
Yes.
would love to hear more about your journey to motherhood.
Mm.
Tell me about your journey to motherhood and tell me about your children. And I just want to say to the audience, we've agreed that we're not going to say school names and we're not going to say kids' names because we want to be able to be transparent in sharing our authentic stories. And we don't want anybody suing us or being mad at us or coming after us. So no kid names, no school names, but tell us about your motherhood journey.
Yes. My motherhood journey, I started late, to be honest. I wasn't really in my 20s, and I wasn't really thinking about having kids. I got married early 30s. And so, several years into the marriage, I was like, maybe I should have some kids. So, and that's how it was. I never, growing up as a young girl, I know a lot of girls want to get married and have kids. That was never really my dream. But, until I was in my mid 30s. And I guess now the term is gestational pregnancy,
I
I
think
guess.
we just looked this up as geriatric.
Oh,
It's actually
geriatric.
geriatric pregnancy after 35, just so you
Yes.
know, people.
Okay.
It's still
Right.
called
Well,
that.
yeah. So I was
We were
35.
both geriatric. I was 35 as well when I got pregnant for the first
Yes.
time.
So yeah, so that I guess so we were both similar in that respect. So yeah, and had my first son, and then a few years later had my second son. But my pregnancies, they were challenging. I didn't have easy pregnancies, and both of my boys, I call them my angels.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love them. I never thought that I would love motherhood as much as I do. I'm such a boy mom. I
Yeah.
really am. Like,
Yeah. What did
you
you think when you found out? First, how old are your sons? We both have two sons, and how old are they? And what did you initially think when you found out you were having boys both times?
My boys are, one is, my youngest is 12, my oldest is 15. Um,
Okay.
and honestly, I didn't even know that I was having boys.
Oh, you didn't find out?
We didn't want to. I mean, we already knew we
Okay.
were pregnant,
Hmm.
so, and,
Yeah.
we would love our child, whether it's a boy or a girl. But when we had our first son, I was really excited to be a mom, just period, right? Because
Hmm.
my pregnancy was so challenging. And then the second time that I got pregnant, I was really hoping for a son because I really wanted my oldest son to have a sibling, and I wanted him to be a boy. I just thought it would be easier.
It's
And
also a lot cheaper. You can just pass down the same clothes
oh
and
yeah, well
all
that
the
part.
same supplies.
Right, exactly.
You see what I'm
So
thinking
I
about.
was really, really, really happy that it was, we had another boy. So they were both surprises, to learn their genders. So, but yeah, no, it
Okay, interesting. I asked that question because MOBB United grew out of initially out of unjustified killings of Black boys and men. And
right,
what
yeah,
I've heard since we've been on this journey for now almost 9 years is that a lot of women, when they find out they're having a boy,
yeah.
there's excitement. There's also a bit of fear and sadness because they know the challenges they're going to face in society as Black boys. Like, it's interesting. Like, almost as soon as they find out they're pregnant, they go from like the joy of knowing that to like preparing for battle.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that more. But
Mhm.
I guess we should get into the boys' room. I would love to hear your motivation for starting the boys' room and how you got started, and a little bit more about what it is. But first, the
Yeah,
motivation.
motivation. So my boys were my motivation. They started independent school in lower school, and so there wasn't much representation then, and so they're my why. Now, how I got there, I was actually, I was invited, a girlfriend of mine invited me to a panel discussion, and it was about white women who teach Black boys. Have you ever heard of that panel discussion with Eddie Moore Jr.?
I don't know. What is it called?
It's
I have a book about it, but I don't know if that's the
Yeah,
same
there
thing.
is. Well, it is. It is.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a panel discussion, and it was in one of the schools in Manhattan. And so first, I was like, "Why is there even a panel discussion about this?" Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Then you
attended
found out, right?
I did. I really did.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. I've shared with folks that there are white women teachers, there are parents of Black boys, and diversity directors that are on the panel. And it was pretty interesting to kind of hear everybody's perspective.
Mhm.
And so, while I was there, I mean, they were making some good points and some I haven't heard, but I just felt like when I left, I just felt like I was a little bothered by something, like something inside of me was just kind of troubling me. And I just
Well, what
never.
were they saying? Like, what was the through line of like, what was the point of this panel?
Well, I remember, I think that the folks were talking about like the white women teachers were talking about like where they grew up and, what they learned and, what they had to unlearn now to be teaching this
Okay.
population of boys. And I just remember one particular parent, she said that, her son was really excited always to go to school. And, one day the teacher, like, I think he might have fell asleep in class or something, and the teacher was really offended by that. And so she embarrassed him and insulted him in front of the classmates. And
Mm,
so, the parents said that it was really hard to kind of get him out of that space then, right? Like he didn't know.
mm,
Go to the classroom anymore. He didn't know if she would ever insult him again. You know what I mean? So
mm-hmm.
it's like something that takes 2 seconds to ruin, crush, and kill, right? And it takes many
Yes.
months to kind of build it back up. And so that story really stuck with me. But yeah, I just to kind of give you perspective, like, so I attended that panel discussion. It was January. And so it was now May, and I was really still thinking about this,
Mhm.
and really not, focused on why I was thinking about it, but it was just something that was constantly coming up daily. And
And did
so,
you had your sons at this point, or
yes, I did. Yep,
both of
I
them? Okay.
did both of them. And so, I just really had to kind of sit with myself and figure out like what's troubling me so much about this panel discussion. And, I shared with folks that like it bothered me so much is because I never really dealt with my feelings, when I was
Mm,
growing up. And I really didn't have an outlet. I had no one to talk to about it. So I would just suppress all of my feelings,
mm.
and I never
Wow.
really dealt with them until now, this moment when I had to sit with myself and everything is coming out and showing up now that I never thought about in 30 plus years, 35 years,
Mhm.
you know? And I had to allow myself to have those feelings now, right?
Right.
And so then now I'm like, okay, so now I've thought about it. And so now I'm like, okay, so now what do I do with this? What do I do with this? And so that's when I was like, I really need to start a mentoring program for Black and Brown boys who go to predominantly white schools. And so I started working with kids in elementary school because I really want to create that foundation for them.
Mhm.
And I never really thought about expanding to middle school until some of the kids started to phase out. And they asked me if I would be willing to start a middle school cohort. And that's what I did. And to be honest, like those cohorts today are larger than my elementary school cohorts.
Wow. That's so interesting.
Mhm.
Um, I just want to share a bit of perspective, then I have a follow-up question. So the reason I started MOBB United, in addition to what I was seeing in the news in terms of unjustified police killings of Black boys and men, with split second judgment, right, is that around the same time I also read an article, I think it was Psychology Today, that
Mhm.
said that when a Black boy turns 10 is kind of a crossover point, that people go from looking at them as sweet, innocent, cute little children to looking at them as potential aggressors and someone who may harm them. So they go from like, oh, what a cute little boy, to like crossing the street and clutching their purse. And they see them and they feel that shift in society. But I would say in schools, it starts much sooner. That's in the broader society. But in schools, we know that they are punished much more frequently for the same behaviors as other children even starting in preschool. We did a study with a professor from the University of Denver a few years ago called the preschool to prison pipeline, because the data shows that even as early as preschool, their behaviors, which are typical childhood behaviors, are judged differently than their white counterparts in particular. So the school is really the place to start, because that's what starts the whole journey to all of these biases and them feeling, not like the wonderful, worthy human beings that they are.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's why I started working with the elementary school kids, right? I mean, like these types of programs, you might find them in, let's say, high school, right? Like I think it's too late by
It's
then,
too late. Their spirits have been crushed.
Right, exactly. And so and even in middle school, I found too, like that's why I wanted to start this programming in lower school, because there were no programs like this for the littles. Right. Like there were no programs like this. And so, even when I first started, I was doing trial and error. I was like, okay, let me try with first graders, or let me try with second graders. And they were just too young. They couldn't sit still. They were changing the topic every 2 seconds. Like they weren't ready.
And that was probably my son. I think that was around the first or second grade.
No comment. No, but it was challenging for them. And so third grade, that's when they can actually like sit and have conversations.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm glad we could be a part of your research to help you refine the program.
So that's when I started third grade. That was my sweet spot to open it up to
Interesting. Interesting. So tell us what happens in the boys' room. And I want to encourage the audience, if you have any comments or questions for Cindy, feel free to post and we will make sure it gets to her. So tell us what happens in the boys' room.
So I can tell you that first we have a couple different types of cohorts. We have the school-based cohort and we have the community-based cohort. And then we actually have the online book club. So we have when I first started the boys' room, I just started a community cohort. Right? Because again, it's lower school. And so I wanted to just kind of gather all of the kids who are from, predominantly white schools. It doesn't necessarily have to be private or independent, although most of the kids were from those environments. I mean, it could be Catholic, it could be charter, as long as it was predominantly white. But most of the kids were an independent school. And so, I had a community cohort. And so to do the pilot program, I met at a location. And so I would have the kids meet there. And, that's what we were doing first, was the community cohort. And so then shortly after that, then we expanded to the school-based cohort, because schools started hearing about it. And so they wanted to partner directly with the boys' room. And so that's when we are working directly with the kids on their campus after school for about an hour. And so, or maybe 75 minutes, but mostly like an hour. And what we do, we focus on 5 core values. And those core values are confidence, it's belonging, it's leadership, respect, and awareness.
Hold on, I'm going to write this down. Confidence, belonging,
leadership,
respect, and awareness. Okay.
Right. So we focus on those 5 core values. And so we meet with the kids from October to May, right? So we don't start in September. It's a little chaotic then. June, everybody's ready for the summer. So we work with them from October to May. And then the schools get to actually choose, like, if, how many sessions they would like to do. So we have 7-session abridged, we have 12-session classic, and we have 17 session expanded. And so we have the 5 core values that we focus on. And so I'll give an example. So if we're looking at the 7-session abridged, so we focus, every session is going to be on 1 core value. And then, but the very first one has to be team building and community building, right? Because we are getting these kids together, whether they know each other or not, and they could go to the same school, right? But they might not be familiar with one another. So we have to make sure that we are building trust in this cohort with the kids, right? And so that's always the first session. And then we would have, like I mentioned, it would be 1 core value per session. And so that would be the 6 sessions. Then the 7th session is when we're wrapping up and it's ending, right? So that's the 7-session abridged. And within that 1 hour, we are doing lecture and discussion, right? Which is then followed by an activity, because the kids, that's the best way kids learn, by doing an activity. And then finally, we have a reflection piece. And so that's when we are allowing the kids to put pen to paper. They are now processing what they just learned from the instructor, right? And so now they are writing down what they just learned or even their takeaways. And I share with the parents and even the schools, I'm like, well, that's writing comprehension. And these kiddos are not thinking about that, right? And so we also encourage them to share what they just wrote, you know? So if the kids are sharing, that's great because that's public speaking, you know?
Yes.
So we want to make sure that they're comfortable in this setting so that when they are in the classrooms, that they're comfortable enough to speak up.
We have a question from the audience. Are you able to see this? Do you want me to read it?
Can you read it?
Sure. It says, when the schools partner, does it become a substitute affinity group for the Black boys? And what does enrollment look like since it's after school?
Good question. So what does enrollment look like? So what we would do is we would send out, the school would send out, it all depends because every school is different, but you know, we could send out a Google form and the school would send that out to the parents. And then they want to find out like how many families would be interested in a program like this. Or some schools just have enough boys and they're like, we know that we want to partner with you. And so we just enter a contractual agreement.
Okay.
What was part of the question?
Does it become a substitute affinity group for the Black boys? I guess maybe the assumption is that schools have affinity groups. I don't know that all schools do. Some do, you know, but
some do and some don't.
Some do and some don't, right? Yeah. So I know you have this content where you're focused on the 5 core values, but and I know you're not in the room with them anymore, like you have instructors, but over the years, what themes have come up that the boys surface in terms of what their concerns and challenges are? And have you seen that change based on age? Like what's on their mind?
The boys want to be more confident, right? They're in these spaces that they're not really reflected, whether it's, you know, there are not many teachers that look like them, you know, their peers, or they're not reflected in the curriculum. So it's confidence. That's one of them. I mean, all of them, right? I mean, there are plenty of values I could have chosen, but I chose these 5 core. But yeah, I mean, that one's a big one. And so, you know, it's always so interesting when I do some of these activities with the kids, because some of them I'm still running some groups, but I do have program instructors who are male, who actually have attended PWIs. I mean, it's important for these young men that I'm bringing in front of my young gents to actually have the experience, because if they don't have the experience, they really can't relate, right?
Right. Yeah.
I am still doing some of them, and I have them. I have the boys. There's this game I call Catch a Compliment, and so that is when the boys actually, I pair them up, and they have to actually look into their partner's eyes, and you know, boys don't like looking in nobody's, right? And so, and they have to compliment them, right? Like for boys,
nice.
Compliments, you know, they don't like it. That makes them uncomfortable, like, you know, to receive or even give, you know, and that makes them squirm. They don't like it. They complain. But after the activity, then we, you know, we get back in group. And so, you know, we're like, okay, so how did that feel? You know, and at this point, again, they're comfortable, right? Because we've already done the team building, and so they're comfortable with these folks. And so they're really being honest. They're like, it actually felt kind of good, you know?
That's nice.
So yeah, so we like to do that, or I might do something that, you know, where depending on the school, like I could be in one of the schools and I'm in like the dance room or something, you know, or an arts room. And so there are mirrors that are there. And so I could have them stand in front of the mirror and, you know, have them say, I belong here, I belong there, I belong everywhere. And I just have them repeat it over and over. Now in the beginning, they don't like it. They're like, oh, this is, why do I have to do this? But after a while, they start looking at themselves, and I have them pausing so they can now process what they're saying to themselves, right? And so they're feeling different about it. So again, then we come back to circle and we're talking about like how that experience feel for you too.
Wow. And what about, so confidence is a big theme. I can see that one. In terms of experiences that they're actually having in these predominantly white institutions, can you share any anecdotes, either personal things that you experienced or that you've heard, in terms of, are they actually experiencing discrimination and being made to feel, less than or like they don't belong?
Yes. There. Yes. So for my littles, one kid experienced racial isolation when another kid, not another kid, a few kids, but one in particular in the group said that they cannot play with him because he doesn't look like them.
Wow.
So
What age was this around?
this was 4 or 5 years old.
Okay, so very early. Yeah.
Pretty early. And look, these kids, like, they know that there is a difference. They might not be able to articulate, right?
Mm-hmm.
They know that there is definitely a difference. And so, while, I mean, that's a very young age. And so that was an experience that someone had shared with me, that still resonated with them, right?
Yeah.
They're older now, and then they can speak to that now. But when they're younger, they really don't know what to say. They just remember that feeling,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I remember, I'm going to share my son's story, but now I just remember my own. You took me back to my own 5-year-old self because my best friend was a white girl named Lynn who had a blonde bob.
yeah,
And I remember her parents didn't want her to play with me. And well, they didn't know we were friends at school. They didn't let her watch the Jeffersons because Tom and Helen were married. Did you watch the Jeffersons?
yes.
No, I definitely wasn't going to her house, but yeah, she couldn't watch the Jefferson because Tom and Helen were married. But I was actually going to tell the story. She had this blonde bob, and I went home and told my mom I wanted my hair like Lynn's, and she was like, "Your hair's not going to be like Lynn's, so it's not going to work." So that was like that's my first memory of like difference, like the combination of the hair situation and the Jeffersons.
Yes.
My son's story, which I share with you, is in kindergarten. They had to do these self-portraits where everybody had to mix their own paint color. And he was he wasn't always, that year he was literally the only Black child in the class. Well, I'll say 100% Black child because there are fractions of Blackness and we won't get into that. But you know what I mean? Like visible, I say the only visible Black child in the class. And when they were mixing the paint, like this girl said, he's the darkest. I won't say his name because we were going to say he's the darkest. Yeah. And my son, I will always remember, had the presence of mind to say, well, who's the lightest? Like his response was who's the lightest. And I will always be grateful to that kindergarten teacher because she actually honored his question, took the time and made the class have a full discussion on who was the lightest. And they voted on the whitest, blondest white girl in the class. So now we know who's the lightest and we know who's the darkest. And my child has not been othered. So when he did that, I was like, this child is going to be all right. Because I wouldn't have been able to do that at 5. Like I would have been like, oh, they pointed out on the darkest. I would have been traumatized and just gone home, and cried about it. He was like, well, who's the lightest? So what? So
he was quick on his feet to say that.
On his feet. I was very proud of that. So we have another question from the audience. So let me just bring it up.
Yeah.
It says, great information, Cindy. Can you share ideas on how we parent support system can better support our boys in these spaces? Thank you, Latrice.
Thank you, Latrice. How you can support? Well, I would say that, what's interesting is that some parents are in this space and they're not connected, right? I would say if you do have, some schools don't have parent affinity groups, right? I would say that you could probably start one at your school. I know one school in particular, when I started to do my programming there, the parents weren't connected. I mean, they knew each other, but they never really formally got together. And so they started an affinity space for themselves, which was great and still going on today. But then if you do that, then you can also have activities for your kids. That's how you're able to support them. So now you have an affinity space, and then you and the other parents can also do some things with your kids. It doesn't matter the grade. Something together.
Yes, thank you. So let me see. Where do we want to go next? Were there any other examples? I don't know what this, do you hear the dinging sound I keep hearing? I don't know where that's coming from. Is that you?
It might be. I don't know how to silence it on my computer. I don't know how to silence it. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Okay. Are there any other experiences you want to share or examples?
No, I think we have quite a bit of questions to go through.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
I
Okay.
want
So,
to
well,
start.
one question I have is, how do you think the experience of Black, well, there are a lot of things we could break down. The experience differ for Black and brown boys because you group together Black and brown boys. So I would love to hear how you define Black and brown boys and whether those experiences differ, and then how you think about the difference between what Black boys experiences and Black girls. And I'll say what I've heard anecdotally, like I'm a mom of boys,
Mhm.
but what I hear is perception is that Black girls actually have it harder in white private schools because the Black boys are able to grow up and they're often athletes and they're considered cool and they date across races, but the girls often feel more ostracized and aren't, asked out on dates and don't have like sports to kind of float them socially. So it's a lot of questions mixed together. So wherever you want to start.
Ah, I would say that there are quite a few. There's overlap there, right? The boys and girls do experience some of the same things, but I would say that the boys also deal with, let's say, folks thinking that they're like aggressive, right, or disruptive. I've heard that about the boys, and let's say the girls, they're dealing more with, let's say, appearance, right? And hair and stuff like that. Like the boys aren't
Mm-hmm.
dealing with things like that. So what you've mentioned, yes, I've heard those as well, but there are some things that differ between those two. And I'm sure they're more for girls, but my focus has been the boys
Right.
because of
Yeah.
my two. So I really kind of zero in kind of on the things that they would be experiencing
Yeah.
more.
I think we share that. We both come from a place of authenticity, right? We're both moms of boys. So
Yeah,
like
exactly.
obviously we love girls and Black girls, of course. And I
Dark,
do a lot of things in my personal time to support Black girls and women, but I'm a
yes.
mom of boys. So this came from a very personal
Mhm.
experience of what I'm facing, what my concerns are for my children. And I thought that would be the most authentic expression of what I could do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what about the Black and brown um, question? Was it always Black and brown? Did it start out Black and add brown?
No, it's
No.
always been black and brown. And so, when you think black and brown, so it's the African American, right? It's the Caribbean, it's,
Mm-hmm.
the Hispanic, the Afro Latino. So it's all of that. Because I am that, and my boys are also that, right?
Okay.
So
So you're speaking of the diaspora, like the
Mhm.
African diaspora
Yeah.
or
Hmm.
so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. And those experiences are very similar. So we
Hmm.
have another question from Keisha. Love this discussion. Cindy, can you share the impact of the organization on some of the boys in the program? And how do you track like whether this is working and how they're impacted?
So great question.
My son actually recently asked to come back to the boys' room. He's going to be aging out soon, but
Well, he needs to
he's
come back
feeling
now.
something. Need for
So
something.
he has, and then also, I might be, expanding to high school, but we can have that
Oh,
conversation.
wow. Okay.
So great question. So I do a pre and post surveys, right? So that's how I'm able to track, right? We do pre-survey for every cohort on the very first or second session, right? And we ask a series of questions. And so my team and I, so we are looking at that, we're evaluating that. We have to see what we need to cover and check the boxes for those kids. And then at the end of the sessions, whether it's 7, 12, or 17, we do the post survey. We want to make sure that we've covered everything that they needed to be covered. In addition to that, we're also tracking attendance, right? So we want to just see, are these kids showing up? And so I can tell you across the cohorts, I mean, we have, in addition to the in-person, we also have the online book club, which I didn't talk about, which I will get to. We have anywhere from the low attendance, which I still think is a really great number, 65% to 100%, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these kids are coming. And so I have my instructors taking attendance every single time that they meet with them. And so again, on the low end, it's 65%, which is still good, to
Mm-hmm.
100%. And there are a couple cohorts that are 100% weekly.
And what do they report? Like on the survey, is there a place where you can do open comments or is it all metrics? Like, what do they say about the
So
experience?
we have open comments.
Mhm.
We have some yes and no questions. It's kind of all over. We only ask just like 8 or 10 questions. We don't ask a lot. Kids
Mhm.
don't like to answer a lot of questions.
So the
Boys.
kids are the ones answering, not the
So the
parents.
kids are doing, yeah,
Okay.
the kids are doing the pre and post. But what we like to do at the end of the sessions when we're wrapping, I always have like a meeting with the parents, right? So I'm
Mhm.
sharing with them information. I'm sharing quotes that were said by some kids. I don't share the kid's name, but like they know, what we're talking about. They know what activity we might have done. They are getting quotes verbatim from the kid who said however they felt in their reflections. So the
Mhm.
parents, they get all that information at the end. And I meet with them also before cohorts even begin, so they kind of know who I am. They can put a name to a face. So the
Right.
parents are always seeing me on the front end and the back end.
Is there any like one comment that has stood out to you that you kind of hold dear in terms of the impact it's had on a young man?
Gosh, there's been so many over the years. Um, I mean, I think I could say, and this wouldn't be verbatim, but there are several comments that are like this, and they would say, I'm happy that we have a program like this at our school. I'm
Mhm.
able to share how I feel, and it feels really good to know other kids are also having this experience as well, and that
Mhm.
they like it and they enjoy the boys' room.
That's great.
Yeah,
So,
thanks.
tell us how can people get the boys' room at their school? Like, if someone wants to bring this to their school, and are you going to do more in community programs? Or is it now going mostly school exclusive?
No, so we are most of the programming. Yes, I'm partnered with the schools, and I've been running my community cohort for years. This is actually the
Mhm.
first year, school year 24-25, that I wasn't able to do the community cohort in person, but we do have a community cohort online.
Okay.
That's
Let's break that down because I don't even think we talked about the locations where you are. So you started with a community program
Yeah, we
in New
started
York.
in New York, right? And then we expanded to Connecticut, Massachusetts, and North Carolina. And
Okay.
so we are in 4 states. We have most of our cohorts are located in New York. And so we're in every borough here, really happy about that. We are looking to expand. I'm looking to cultivate more relationships with schools in the states that I'm in right now. I've also, I've been doing a few speaking engagements and workshops too in different states, and that's been working out well. I don't know, I'm sure you're familiar with POCC, People of Color Conference. So I've done that. That's hosted by National Association of Independent Schools. I've also done workshops in Salt Lake City, where I think it's the administrators of independent schools, admission professionals.
Mhm.
Did some things there too. I've done diversity symposiums here in New York City. So just really getting the word out. But I really would
Yeah.
love for folks to really speak to their schools, so that we would be able to partner with them.
Okay.
If there are schools that do not have enough kids at their school, then we can maybe think about doing a community cohort with maybe a couple different schools. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm happy to do that. It would be really great too for, funding is always an issue too, right? And so we're a small organization. So,
And are
looking,
you for profit or nonprofit?
we are for profit. We're for
Okay.
profit. And
Mhm.
so, it would be great for us to get funding from larger organizations or companies, even. I just want to make sure that the program is sustainable,
Mhm.
here and then in all the other states that we're in right now. So if we are looking to expand to another state, of course, I have to, find program instructors in that state, which I've done that before, and there are in the states that we're in now. But there's quite a bit as a small business that I need to do. I don't have a co-founder. It is only me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and I have a very small team right now, amazing team, but very small. And so I always say that this particular program, it has to outlive me. You know,
Mhm.
very, very important that these boys have this space where they feel like, they're acknowledged and they're affirmed, right?
Mhm.
So we have to continue to keep this thing going. So any
Yeah.
support that I can get from the parents, schools, or wherever, I welcome all of that. Yeah.
Okay. So parents, talk to your school administrators and tell them you want the boys' room, and at the end we'll get how people can contact you if they
Yes.
want to do that. I want to take a turn. We don't have that much time left. I encourage more questions from the audience, but I want to take a turn because I think it would be you know, negligent not to talk about where we are in this moment in history and the fact that all the things we're talking about are coming under attack. There are executive orders against DEI, which at first, we probably thought would be narrowly defined, but it's going to the extent of things like affinity groups in workplaces and anything that supports or encourages group identity is how it's been described. Racial identity, gender identity, all of that is under attack. There's a list of words that was published that are being stripped from federal agency websites. And among them are things like accessible, inclusion, diversity, equal opportunity. The word Black itself is on the list. We are moms of Black Boys United, and the word Black is on a list of things that you should not say or do. So I'm just wondering, like, how you are processing this moment. It's still very early, and whether you're concerned about the sustainability of the program given the current environment.
Yeah, I mean, I am concerned. I am. And I haven't fully experienced it really. I've experienced it a little bit. There has been some institutional pushback, and so I'm just really concerned about funding challenges too, right? Like
Right.
I'm working with these schools right now, and thankfully they will be coming on board again for 25, 26. But there are some schools who are just like, why don't we revisit this for 26, 27?
Like we have to take a beat and assess where we are. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's kind of where I'm at. Again, I haven't experienced a lot
Hmm.
of it. I'm just really excited that the schools that I'm working with right now are going to be coming back on board. And I'm pushing through. Listen, this
Yeah.
program would be
We have
what
to.
if I didn't, right? So
Right.
still looking to cultivate those relationships. I'm still looking to having a seat at that table. And I will
Hmm.
continue to do that.
Yeah. And beyond the boys' room, like what are your main concerns in general for Black and brown boys in this moment as we look to the future?
I want to make sure that they have a continued safe space. That's important. I want to, because I feel like there's probably going to be, in this time now, increased discrimination. Schools not addressing things for the boys,
Hmm.
a little bit of concerning for me. And then just limited opportunities, right? Like no leadership programs, is going to be no growth, right? So that's
Yeah.
concerning. That's concerning.
Yeah, for sure. So I think I agree. I think we have to focus on safety and our
Mhm.
sanity, our wellness, and figure out how we support each other and continue to lift each other up and nourish each other because it may not come from anywhere else. It might not come from institutions, it might not come from the government. So,
Mhm.
how do we continue to create these safe spaces? We have another question from the audience. Looks like it's from someone in your family, perhaps.
Oh,
Or is
okay.
this the other branch of
Yes, I haven't. Well,
the
the Asamoah name is a pretty popular name, right?
Okay.
so, so although we might think that folks might be related, they might not.
Okay.
But I will answer this question. I
You're the
see.
only someone I know, so I apologize.
Oh, that's
See, this
okay.
is why
We're
we
the big
have the
soccer player too.
diaspora conversations, right? We all have blind spots.
So the book club, I really enjoy it. So this is something. So as of June of this year, the boys' room would be 6 years old. Really excited about that. And
Mhm.
so the book club started about 3 years ago. And, this is something that, I wanted to create a balance because we were doing this in group and, programming, in-person programming. And so I wanted to just balance that with having something online. And so this is an opportunity for all of the cohorts in all of the states to actually get together and read books about their experiences, right? So, we meet weekly. This online platform, we meet weekly. And so it's from October to May, every single week, with the exception of the holidays and school breaks. And we have 2 co-facilitators. We have the junior cohort, which is the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. And then we have the senior cohort, which is the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And, these kids are meeting, and we have on an average 20 to 25 boys every single Sunday, every
Wow.
single week.
And
And
they're each discussing a book, age-appropriate book for their cohort.
and so, so my facilitators and I, like, we go through like a list of books and we choose the best book. So it's not like we're randomly just choosing whatever, like we're making sure it's age appropriate. Like we really go through it, and the kids are enjoying it. I mean, they absolutely love it because we create such a cool space. Like, they come into the Zoom room, we've got music playing for them. And then we start playing like Cahoots or Would You Rather, or just making it real fun for them, or have riddles for them. And then we go into our breakout rooms, right?
Okay.
And then the last 5 to 10 minutes, I would say, we come back together again. And so now the kids are just sharing their experiences with each other. So it's really cool.
Nice. I think the answer is no, but I want to confirm. Can people become a part of the online book club without being a member of one of the cohorts?
Yes. And that's
I'm glad I asked.
Yes, you can. Okay. So that has happened because we have kids. I'm not in their states yet. I'm not in Florida. I'm not in Texas. I'm not in the States. So yes, you definitely can, for sure.
And how can people join?
Reach out to me, and then I could send them a registration form, get them all set up, and then they can start.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. What's your vision? This is my last question. If the audience has any other questions, please get them in now before we wrap up. But what is your vision for the future of the boys' room?
I really want it to be everywhere. I do. Right? I do. I mean, I'm on the East Coast right now, and most of the states and programming happens there. But I really want it to be Midwest. I want it to be out West. I really want it to be in those places. And I know that it will get there. It'll take some time. The program has been growing organically, and I appreciate that. It hasn't been growing too fast and too furious. Don't want that to happen. But eventually we will get there. But I definitely want to expand beyond just the East Coast.
Okay. Well, hopefully the people who are watching this now or later can help you do that by requesting that their school ask the boys' room. So tell us how, if someone wants to explore getting the program at their school, what's the best way to contact you?
You can reach out to me, my email, which is support@theboysroom.org. And maybe we can probably put in the chat there. My website, www.theboysroom.org. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. You can reach me at the Boys Room Program.
Okay, I'm going to put this here so that it will live permanently and make sure I got it right. Let's see. Is that right?
Yes, it is right. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so that will live here for the people who watch or listen to this later. But is there anything else you want to share that I didn't ask you before we wrap up?
Yeah, there's some other programming that we do too. So we're meeting in person and online, but we also do financial literacy workshops. We do that. The past few years, we've done that in person. This is the first year that we're actually looking to expand. We want to be able to include more kids. And this is the first time that we're including the parents as well. So we're going to be online doing this. This year, I've also started to incorporate university tours. So I flew down, my North Carolina cohort ended last month. I flew down there, and it was really great because, of course, these kids are going to PWIs. Well, I connected with an HBCU, and I took those kids on campus tour to the HBCU, and they were blown away. It was amazing. So
I have to interject. I'm a proud Howard University alum, and I'm on the board of Howard. So if you want to take them to Howard,
yes, okay,
you should let me know.
We'll definitely talk. Yes. And so we're doing that, and and the kids, they've been saying that they want to actually meet in person, right? So we're looking to see if we can have an end of year culmination kind of a thing where they can kind of just kick it and hang and meet each other in person, because they have the opportunity online for the book club, but they really want to meet each other, right? And I'm really trying to see fingers and toes how I can make that happen because we're all in different states, but that's something I'm thinking about doing. And some of the other things that we've done in the past, I mean, we've done etiquette workshops, we've done dress for success, we've done community things, in the neighborhoods and things. So there's quite a bit of things that we've done, and we will continue to do, but we're also adding other things as well too. So
you're getting a lot of positive feedback. Great idea. Please do that. So I think you're on the right track. And I just, have to say personally, as someone, sounds like I was there toward the beginning of the program where you were testing it out on first and second graders. You quickly learn. We're not going to sit still. But I'm just so proud of you, like to see your growth, to see this come to life, to see you expand into multiple states. It's just beautiful to see. And I just want to congratulate you and continue to be here, to support. And I think we can find ways, to help each other on our journey.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This was such a pleasure. I loved having this conversation. I love, of course, always seeing you. So thank you so much, Dipelsha. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And thanks to everyone who joined. And if you joined, please share. This will be live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. So share the link with people who maybe wanted to make it tonight but couldn't make it, so that they can get this great information as well. It'll continue to live on our website as well indefinitely. So good night, everyone. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
1 second.